You're part of the most media consuming population ever. You watch and listen to more media in 1 week than your ancestors of just 2 generations ago did in a year. Hi, I'm Ralph Henderson. I am your host of the Global Supply Chain Marketing Group, brought to you by Supply Chain Brain Media. Today, don't miss out. We're talking about media opportunities for 2025, and we're going to be talking to a couple of supply chain brain experts and a PR strategist from PR for Anyone. Today, you're going to learn how to identify some newsworthy moments. You're going to learn how to pinpoint events and trends within the operations that naturally align with broader industry and narratives. And we're going to make our companies the go-to source for media coverage. So when they want to know, they're going to ask us. We're going to talk about engaging proactively with the media and how to engage with journalists and how to create crafty and timely pitches. We want to build relationships with these folks, and we want to create long-lasting relationships that allow us to be part of the media going forward. So we are front of mind during news breaks. And we know right now with this 24-hour news cycle and everything that's going on, lots of opportunities for those news breaks. So we don't want to wait for the media coverage to come to you. It rarely, if ever, does. We want to equip ourselves with the strategies to go after it. We want to ensure we're part of the conversation in 2025. If you have any questions, and we certainly hope you do, put them in the Q&A area of the webinar. We'll get to as many of those today live as time permits. And fear not, whatever we don't get to, we'll certainly make sure we get a hold of you, and we will give you the ability to get a hold of us during this webinar. With that, let's introduce our panelists. Today, our special guests are Bob Bowman, who is the editor-in-chief of Supply Chain Brain, the website and magazine devoted to senior level executives with responsibility for supply chain management, logistics, technology, and international trade. Bob hosts and produces the weekly Supply Chain Brain podcast, as well as appearing in numerous videos, including a lot of webinars that we do at Supply Chain Brain Media. He's also a frequent speaker at industry events and a published author. We also have with us Helen Atkinson. Helen is the managing editor at Supply Chain Brain. Now, look, in the middle of Helen's career, she actually took a break and then went to work in transport and supply chain journalism as a PR consultant. So she's kind of gatekeeper turned poacher turned gatekeeper. So she's definitely going to be somebody we want to hear from today. And she's going to give us perspective from both of those sides regarding what's worked best in earned media. And that's really what you're here for, is to learn how to do that. And our special guest today, who we're really thrilled to have, and we certainly love our Bob and Helen for sure. But today we have Christina Dave. She's a publicity strategist. She's dedicated to helping businesses elevate their visibility through media. And you certainly want to get to know Christina in the PR world. She's got a passion for transforming, get this now, the world's best kept secrets into the most widely recognized brands. She guides professionals to move from established to known through a process she calls Get PR Famous. She's also the author of 2 best-selling books on PR. She's been a regular on-air expert about this. She hosts monthly television segments, and she's a guest host on QVC, but she's also got her own podcast, and it's a nationally ranked podcast called Living Ageless and Bold. And with all of that, I want to say welcome to our panelists.
Hi. Thanks, Rob.
Hey, Hey, Helen. Hey, Bob. Christina, you're on mute, just so you know. And thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate it. Look, we're going to dive right into the questions that I have prepared in preparation for this. And I am so, I know, convinced our audience is going to get so much out of what we're going to learn about earned media. So the first question is, and Christina, I'm going to send this one to you. How can supply chain businesses really make their stories compelling and newsworthy? And Bob and Helen, feel free to add some color to whatever Christina has to say.
Sure.
It's really important to hone in on what your company does. The media doesn't want a supply chain expert on everything. There are different stories for different topics. So whatever your industry specific topic is, get crystal clear on that, so that when you're pitching and then they check you out, which the media is going to do, make sure that your website and wherever if you're writing a newsletter or content is in line with what you're pitching the media, so that they can see you and say, oh yeah, this is perfect, of course we can use them. You really want to, what do they say, the riches are in the niches.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you figure out what your industry, I still say niche, but what your industry niche is.
That's okay. The riches can be in the niches.
Niches, yeah, exactly.
Bob
But
and Helen, anything to add to that?
Christina, that really tracks with what Helen and I experience on a daily basis. I would say it's a two-part answer from my standpoint. One is your ability to tap into what's actually happening out there, what people are truly concerned about. That's first. Secondly, is that you actually have something to say about that subject that is drawn from your real expertise, not something that you just gleaned from the media that we all are reading. Helen and I are constantly getting pitches from people who are saying, we want to talk about this, but their observations are what we already know. So we need that personal thing, and we need you to tap into the zeitgeist, so to speak, of what's actually happening.
I agree, Bob. I mean, it's really about getting specific, and I can't emphasize this enough. Read the coverage of the outlet that you're pitching. Get to know what they like, what the last few articles they published about the subject that you're pitching, and tailor your pitch to that. That's incredibly important.
Excellent. Well, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan of what you guys are talking about, and it's fascinating, and I hope we can weave it into the fabric of some of the other answers on what the issue is on why people don't do that. Like when did we get into this? We need to heat the ocean versus spear the fish in anything, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see how we can maybe interweave. So, Christina, can you share some examples of supply chain companies that maybe have successfully positioned themselves in the media, and what did they do right?
Yeah, so I'll give you one. You all can Google them right now. Lee and Fung. They are supply chain in the fashion space. So we're starting to niche. And then their expertise is a sustainability and environmental friendly. And they are working with fashion companies all over the world to do that. So if you put their name into Google and you click news, you're going to be blown away. They are constantly in the news. But this goes back to what we just talked about. They're not pitching generic supply chain stories. They are laser focused on fashion, sustainability, and the environment. And when you hone in like that, they're the expert in that. So when CNBC or MSN or Supply Chain Brain Magazine wants to write about supply chain in the fashion industry related to sustainability, what are companies doing? That's who they want to talk to.
Right. Yeah, no, that's important. And Bob and Helen both know we work with so many great companies who do a good job. And Christina, you've actually been able to help at the Global Supply Chain Marketing Summit we did 2 years ago down in Florida, one of them, and I'm sure they don't mind me pitching them, but it was Locus Robotics. And
Yeah.
so they, I thought what they did was great at the horizontal, where what you're talking about is the vertical. So I want the audience to know, don't get too hung up in the niche being a vertical niche,
Mm.
because it can be a horizontal niche. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Okay, Christina, here's a question I like asking everybody that's an expert, and that is, So, what are the biggest mistakes companies make in the industry? Like when they're trying to get media coverage out. And Bob and Helen, I know you've got some input on
Yeah.
this, but Christina,
I
I'll
think
start with you. What are some
Yeah.
of the pitfalls?
Number one, if you get nothing else out of today, when you pitch the media, it really has nothing to do about you. And I would say, I'm not mean to my clients. Like, I've got to drill this into your head. It's not, Bob and Helen don't care about me. Bob and Helen care about what value I can bring to their audience. So when you're pitching, you have to think that way. You're going to reap all the benefits of being named in an article or being interviewed on television. You're going to get the link backs. You're going to get everything. But when you can change your mindset to the fact that your pitches have to be value driven to that audience. Helen already said it. Look back at what we've covered on that. What's something different? What did they miss? Hey, I saw you've covered X, Y, and Z. We specialize in ABC. Have you thought about covering this part of the story? This is so important because your audience needs to know that this is happening, and here's why. That's once you can shift that, you will have so much success.
All right, Bob
I
and
love
Helen,
that, Christina.
this is the fun part.
I
You get
know
to tell
Helen's
us-
got something to say about this one.
Me,
Yeah, Helen, how do people screw this up?
Oh, so many ways. And it's really sad that I would say 90% of the PR people, whether they're external PR people or internal PR people, do not do that fundamental thing that Christina said. And it is so important. Put yourself in my shoes. I have an inbox that's absolutely rammed every day. And in order to distinguish yourself, you need to think about what's going to interest me and tailor the pitch to me. Do not, the worst mistake is the spray and pray. Oh God, please, please stop doing that.
Mm.
And also the kind of formulaic pitch, which is, begins with, what I call the nobody knows why the dinosaurs died intro, which is like, supply chain managers are facing unprecedented disruption. And, it's like, yeah, we know all that. Get to the
Oh
point.
my God, really?
But
Yeah.
be specific, be tailored, build a relationship. Another huge mistake, and I will let Bob speak. I'm not going to take up the rest of the hour with this.
Well, she rarely does anyway, so just go ahead.
But the other thing is, if we already have an existing relationship, if we have covered your client or your company in the last 5 years, mention that up front. We already have a relationship. Don't approach me as if we've never heard of each other before. That's one of the things that annoys me a lot.
Interesting. I'll be honest with you, Helen. I would not have thought that would be an irritation spot, but I do understand it now that you've brought it up.
Right. Well, we've had several incidents just in the last couple of months where I get a pitch to interview an expert at a company, and I literally interviewed them last week and published the story this morning.
Oh
And
my.
somehow the PR person is not aware of that. That's
Oh my.
really bad form.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I want to point to an apparent paradox, which is not really a paradox at all. And that is that if you are a seller or a vendor of supply chain products, services, software, or something, and you're communicating with us, the way to sell your product is not to sell your product. In other words, you're selling your expertise. People come to us with it seems to be just like a naked advertisement for what they are trying to sell, turns us off, turns our audience off. That's advertising, and that's fine. You can do that in advertising, but don't do that in an editorial standpoint. We want you to be the thought leader, the high level person who rises above that and provides us with valuable content.
Well, and what's interesting, Bob, is they don't like it either, right? I mean, it's so funny how, we kind of switch our brains using the supply chain brain metaphor when we're trying to get the word out about who we are and what we do. We have one thought on, hey, everybody would want to know about this. And to your point, if it's advertising, there's nothing wrong with advertising. As a matter of fact, the people who are bringing you today's show is Supply Chain Brain Media. They're all about advertising. So there's
Right,
nothing wrong
right.
with that. but it's not the editorial, it's not the earned media, it's not the PR stuff that we're talking about. And they don't like it either. And so I love that you guys have brought that up and articulated it in a way I think people would better understand.
Yeah,
All right.
Ralph, you and I just want to mention what you and I talk about sometimes is that who wants to read that stuff that's that's not focused on what we want? Your PR firm, your CEO, and your mom.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ralph, I want to throw one more thing out that Helen brought up, and this is really important. When you're pitching, not only are you tailoring your pitch to that specific media outlet, you don't want to send, what do you call it, Helen? The spray and pray.
Yes.
But I have interviewed a lot of editors and people in the media, and they tell me they repeatedly get emails that say, "Dear Brackett, insert name here."
Yeah.
If you want to get covered in the media, don't do that. You have got to send Bob an email to Bob and Helen to Helen, not insert name here.
Oh my.
That will get you deleted very quickly.
Yeah. And like I said, guys, you know, they feel the same way when they get it, right? This is the thing that fascinates me is, you know, we kind of have this two-way of how we do these things kind of a thing. And what you guys are doing very eloquently and very kindly is just letting them know, you know, you feel the same way as they do when they get that stuff. That's all. All right, so the next one, and Christina, thank you for bringing this to my opinion or my attention 2 years ago, because now it has been so much a part of earned media and how I communicate, and that is this this topic of news jacking. So for those of you who don't know, this is a real thing, and we're going to talk about it now. But listen up, because
it's so important.
Yeah. And so Christina, again, I'll start with you. How can companies effectively use newsjacking to secure media? And Bob and Helen, give us maybe some ideas of what might be some good topics or ways to do that. Christina?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to explain what newsjacking is. So when you pitch the media, you want something that's timely, relevant, and that they have to give you a yes or a no immediately. If it's what we call evergreen, a story they could run anytime, it'll get put in a folder, even if it's good, you know. And I had sent stuff in, and 12 months later, they're like, "Hey, are you still doing this? This was good. It didn't fit in our puzzle at the moment." But when you do newsjacking, so what's happening in the media right now that people are talking about, that you can insert yourself in as the expert, because the media wants to keep it going. You know, media has to be out on social media and get people to read their publications or watch what they're doing. So if you're talking about a hot topic, so right now, today, and I know people are going to watch this on a recording, but it's tariffs. So, but you don't want to just talk about tariffs in general, and I'll let Bob and Helen go more specific into it, but what does your company do, and what can, back to that niche, real specific on what it is. That's what you want to pitch, because the tariff story is everywhere and they want to keep it going. So what are those peripheral stories that you can pitch that allows them to keep that story alive, but you're just giving it a different angle and a different spin?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Helen on this one. She's got a lot to say about this.
Well, thank you, Bob. Our email boxes are absolutely jammed at the moment with people trying to newsjack the tariffs issue. And I would say that although newsjacking can be a good idea, it has to be done very cautiously because it can backfire. I'm just deleting most of the pitches I'm getting at the moment because the expert or the executive that's being offered has nothing to say beyond what you could get from reading a New York Times or Wall Street Journal article. You know, of course it's challenging in a supply chain manner. A lot of these companies are software companies that actually could have some useful data that they could anonymize and see what, say, for example, if it's too soon to say what the effect of the tariffs is now, what happened in 2018, the last time Trump introduced tariffs. You know, but so be very careful. Don't just go, oh, there's something big from Walmart, I'm going to mention that in my pitch. But even though my client or company has nothing to do with Walmart, that can be. So be very careful about how you newsjack it. You definitely want a pitch to be timely, and it's great if you can hook it to something really hot that's in the news. but don't just go, oh, let's do something about tariffs, because our guy could say something that anybody could say.
Yeah, no, guys, I'm telling you, this is so important. And Helen, you've touched on a couple of really cool things. And look, I've been in this space since 1991, and I have seen a few of these cycles, a few of these seasons, and we do owe our constituents, our listeners, our viewers, the honor of doing something well and putting some effort into it. And so what Helen's talking about is, please don't be lazy about it. And I apologize for that vernacular, but I think it says it correctly. It's like, put some real effort into it. I mean, I saw this, when supply chain actually started to hit right in the late 90s. And then, we've gone through optimization, we've gone through robotics, I mean, for goodness sakes, we're still in the land of AI, and now because of, what's going on in politics, you have tariffs. But so that's the encouragement from the put some effort into it. The encouragement from this can benefit you is there are so many of them. I mean, my goodness gracious, if you're a supply chain solution provider, look at what you do and who you are. There's got to be optimization, robotics, AI, tariffs. I mean, whether it's politics or business, there's got to be some, and then put some effort into doing that, and the audience will appreciate it being more specific. And obviously, the three people who are talking to us today will also be. So, is that fair to sum it up that way?
Sure. Yeah. Don't be lazy. Don't be sloppy. Be specific. Oh, and another thing, I just want to interject this here. This is a sort of mistake point, but it is relevant to the newsjacking. If you have successfully pitched me a story that's very specific and timely, and then I get on the phone or on Zoom with your executive, and he or she is not briefed properly and wants to talk about something else, like, push what the company does, that is a real waste of my time, and it can be a real relationship crusher.
Yeah.
So it's very important to make sure that you're not just, off in the stratosphere pitching stories that your executives can't actually speak to.
Yeah.
All right.
I would say a side issue to that, Helen, is also the disconnect sometimes between a PR person pitching us on an interview only to find out that saying, well, so-and-so is not available right now. And I always send back a somewhat tempered, but also somewhat angry email saying, if your person is not available to speak to me, please don't pitch me on a conversation with them in the first place. So
Right.
that's just a
And
small.
and Bob, that person then has probably burned a bridge with you.
They have.
Yeah.
So what's so important for everybody watching this is, if this is what you want, if you want to be an expert in the media, if you want to get your company in the media, do it with intention, do it the right way, spend the time to personalize, to do the research, to spend that time, or make sure that your PR firm is doing that as well, because you only get one chance to make that first impression. And if you blow it, like Bob just said, you might be out. Bob might see an email from your company and just hit delete. He doesn't have time for it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point. And look, folks, I would again argue pragmatically and objectively and in an encouraging way that, this is really something in 2025 I would put some effort into. This is the beginning of what's going to be, in my opinion, a long cycle of opportunities with topics, with the supply chain being so prevalent now. And so everybody, now being so receptive to it. I mean, for those of us who have been in the industry for any length of time, I mean, prior to the pandemic, if you told somebody you were in the supply chain space, they would look at you like you had four heads, and so now's a great time to be getting into this. All right, so my last rant kind of leads into the next question, and that is, Christine, I'm going to start with you again. What are some of the underutilized media opportunities, in your opinion, that supply chain businesses should be leveraging?
Yeah. So the first one is the podcast. I mean, podcasts are the hottest thing going right now. And, people think, oh, well, I'd want to be on Joe Rogan because he's the number one podcast. But you don't. because his million followers or downloads probably aren't in the supply chain space. Maybe you'll get 10. What you want to do is find that hyper focused one where your potential clients are listening and can hear you for 30 minutes or an hour or 10 minutes, whatever the podcast is, where you're sharing your expertise. Even if they only have 1,000 downloads, if it's 1,000 of your potential client or customer, that's a no-brainer. And people tend to just disregard that. And my second one is the LinkedIn newsletter. It's really powerful. I have over 4,000 subscribers to my newsletter, which is pretty darn good that people have opted in to say, yes, Christina, I want to hear from you once a week about your PR tips. What are you talking about? So, but you have to be consistent. That's really important. Don't say, oh, I'm going to do a newsletter and blast it out to all your LinkedIn followers, and then you only do one and you never do it again. You've got to commit to it. You know, and I do them every week, or you can do it once a month, whatever that is. But that's another great way to hone in on your ideal clients and customers.
Yeah.
And Bob and Helen, you guys know better than most, you know, what are some of the underutilized topics that right now might be good for you and for them to talk about?
Well, Helen might have something more specific to say about this, but I don't know if the underutilized is the word I would use. I would simply say embrace the full range of media opportunities that you have, and it's unprecedented today. You have print, you have video, you have podcasts, you have newsletters, you have this wide range of options from which to choose, and you should just embrace them all.
I agree. And I also, to be more specific, to Supply Chain Brain, we're always looking for well-written byline articles on relevant topics
for sure.
for our think tank section. I mean, that's a really, really easy way to get a nice big fat feature. And we have editorial guidelines that we share with people who are interested. The other thing is case studies. If you have a customer who loves what you've done for them, get them to agree to give us an interview, and you'll be interviewed too as a service provider. And then our readers love hearing real world examples of how services and technology work in real life. So those are things that I think are somewhat perhaps underappreciated as media opportunities.
Interesting thing about the case study is it is the one opportunity where the seller of services actually is featured in the story side by side with the customer, because that is the very nature of it, that you want to talk about how these two entities came together to solve an interesting supply chain challenge. Why this entity was chosen, how the solution was implemented, what were the benefits to be derived from it. In every other aspect, Helen and I always insist in these editorial matters that you keep your business out of your contributions and you be a thought leader that speaks from a very high level, but that is the exception.
Right. So
and I just want to add something else. It's a little tangential, but I think it's really important to get back to the relationship thing. I think the opportunities to form a relationship with an editor are massively, massively underutilized. I've been working with a great PR firm that's been pitching me. They're very rare, but I mentioned something about my cat in an email. And so the person on the other end's like, oh, tell me about your cat. And, it's nice to have a little bit of water cooler talk. We all work from home. It's just, I wish that PR professionals would just ask themselves, with how many editors or reporters do I have an actual one-on-one relationship? It cannot be that many. You must make the time to develop and foster those relationships, because they are absolute gold dust.
Yeah. And Helen, once again, you're talking about the thing that people understand when they're on the other side of the desk, right? So, 100% of people would say relational versus transactional when it comes to connecting with people. But yet when we're the ones doing the pitching, or we're the ones doing the, trying to get what it is we're trying to get, we turn into transaction monsters, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%.
And I think part of the problem is, I just briefly want to say this, that unfortunately a lot of PR agencies, a company will get a pitch from a PR agency from a senior person in that PR agency who actually does understand what their business does. And it's great. And you sign a contract and then they throw it over the wall
Oh,
to a young person who has no idea what the supply chain is or what supply chain software does. And they're just like spray and pray emails. Would you like to write about my company? And they don't even know what it does. And it's
right.
so frustrating. I really encourage companies that are looking for PR people to help them to be very clear about what level of expertise is going to be offered on a daily basis when your company is pitching.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I appreciate this, guys. I mean, really, the theme has been, be focused, know who you are, put effort into it, don't be lazy. And you know what? Over time, this does work, and you will make these relationships. So, Christina, with that in mind, let's say somebody's done all of this or most of this, and now, they've secured some good media coverage. They've got these relationships. How give them an idea of how they maximize this for long-term exposure. How would you advise them, if you will, to leverage this for a longer time?
Yeah. And so this is, I mean, this is what I teach my clients. And just so you all know, I'm not a
There you
PR
go.
firm. I know we're throwing the PR firms under the bus. I'm teaching your companies, your people how to do this so that it's in-house and you don't fall under these mistakes. So you get that interview, you've done everything we've told you to do, you get it, your CEO, whoever that is, you have to be your own megaphone. You do. It is a loud, noisy, busy world out there. That being said, you have so much opportunity to do it. It should be in your email signature. See my latest article in Supply Chain Brain magazine and link to it. Put it on your featured section in your LinkedIn. Put it on all of your social media. And don't forget the social media that's current. You have things like Throwback Thursday, so you could always go back. If something timely happens in the news related to what you were interviewed on, push it back out again. Oh, they're talking about this today. And last month I was interviewed on this exact topic. And, this is blah, 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 what I had to say. But you have so many opportunities with social media and if you have an email list, if there's a client that article could really impact, potential client, not a client, somebody you're trying to get in with, hey, Bob, I know this is your area of expertise or you're looking for help in this area. I was just interviewed for XYZ. I thought this article might be helpful to you. That's all. Not asking for business, not anything, but it gets your foot in the door. It gets you in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I
And
know. I see on social all the time where Bob and Helen are interviewing people, and they put out a daily. Supply Chain Brain puts out a daily, and what they'll do is they'll cut out that interview and put that out, and it can be, I mean, on just about any topic in supply chain. And what's fascinating is, the executives appreciate that because now they have something that's, editorial, it's unbiased, it's conversational, it's intelligent, it's relevant. And so, to your point, Christina, this ongoing, consistent, look, guys, the good news is supply chain is not going away. Okay. So let's all jump on and let's start riding this thing out. And you've got so much to offer. Bob and Helen, anything to add to leveraging maybe longer term stories or topics or relationships or anything like that?
relationships, really. And one thing that almost never happens, but it really comes to the top when it does happen, is when somebody takes the trouble to send me an email simply commenting on something that appeared on Supply Chain Brain.
Right.
Saying thanks for that. That was a great thing. Or for that matter, that, we have, maybe that wasn't a great thing. Or, I have a few people who will actually send me emails just to start up a conversation about what we've been running. And they're not at that moment selling me anything, but they're establishing that rapport
Right.
that I'm going to remember them next time.
Yeah, because
totally.
we're very sad people. We want to know that people are reading what we write because
Of course.
we send it out into the
Is
ether.
anybody listening?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you've got a 500,000 and that's, and that's right now your distribution on a yearly basis, if you've got a 500,000 executives looking at this stuff throughout the year, I am sure you've got people who love some of the articles, people who are vehemently, disagreeing about articles. I mean, as a producer and a promoter, I mean, that's what you want, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
Mm.
kind of want all of those audiences because, that's kind of what makes the world go round. But Bob, to your point, just knowing we're human and reaching out and maybe having a conversation about that is nice.
right. And also, it really helps to let us know that you're actually reading the coverage and are therefore whatever
Yeah.
communication you are having with us is based on an actual knowledge of what we're writing about and what we're interested in. So
Right.
that's very important. I just want to get back to this thing about how we can maximize exposure for long-term impact. The other
Uh-huh.
thing is if your executive has been interviewed in Forbes or so, some major publication, like preferably not one of our competitors, but you know, that has established them as a go-to expert in that particular subject matter. So that can be part of your next pitch. Say, as you know, John Smith, here's a link to the article where he was interviewed about this particular subject. He has more to say that might interest you. It definitely lends credibility. I mean, the ideal the ideal outcome is that you have positioned your executive or executives as experts in the trusted experts in the industry. That's what we're interested in. People who have the knowledge and the gravitas and the ability to speak clearly about issues within the industry.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Helen, for that, because I know that's what Christina and I, as we were putting this together to produce this, we wanted people to do. We wanted them to be the go-to expert, because look, there are times where there are things going on where it would be nice for you to be able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because I know in the past we've talked and you've been the expert in this area. And that's what I want the audience to get. I want them to get whatever it is they need to get from this in order to get there so we can start creating that.
Right. And I just wanted to add another thing. So the relationship goes two ways as well. You're trying to build relationships with editors and journalists, but you should also be developing a deep relationship with your company or client, all the different subject matter experts that are within that. Have a sit down once a month, once a week. Go, hey guys, what's going on out there? Just tell me, just shoot the breeze. And often ideas for pitches will come out of that. If you're taking a really deep dive internally and finding out what's going on at the coalface of what your company is doing, that's incredibly valuable too. So the relationship goes both ways.
Yeah, Helen, I just got chills. I cannot tell you how powerful of a suggestion that is. As somebody who, for the first 20 years of my career, went up the executive chain in the supply chain space, I wish we would have more often gotten together and talked to the marketing, the PR, the executives about the current and, the pain that we were seeing out there and
Right,
what was happening,
exactly.
because communicating that is so, so important. No. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to make sure the audience, if you're watching this on a recording, back it up and listen to what Helen just said, because that was very, very important. Hey, listen, I would not be a host if I did not at least bring up social media and PR, right? I mean, come on, guys. So we have to talk about this. Christina, what role does social media play in amplifying PR efforts for supply chain companies?
And I touched on it a little bit, but you can't walk away from social media. You
Right.
can't. It's not going anywhere. It's evolving. Even TikTok was banned. Now it's back. If TikTok gets banned, something else is going to come. You have to be aware of it. Ralph has brought up a couple times at the supply chain conference that they did. I actually used an example of an attendee, and look at DHL on Instagram. They're unbelievable. They have a phenomenal platform there, and that has helped them get media coverage. That has helped them create partnerships with people they wanted to partner with, because they can now offer that up. Hey, we have this, this big platform that we can share our message together on. And it is a megaphone, for you. So it's important, and you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be on TikTok. I'm just throwing that out there. But I mean, for sure, LinkedIn, all of you should be active on LinkedIn, period. But like I said, who would think that a DHL could blow up on Instagram? It's kind of like TSA. If you don't follow TSA on Instagram, they're fantastic. But it's really fun. But again, you have an opportunity to get your voice heard by a lot of people using social media.
Agreed. And Bob?
Yeah, Helen and Bob, you got to tell me what you're thinking about social with PR.
Well, so much of social media is a dumpster fire, let's face it. You just have to be selective about where you're going and what channels you're using. It is important. I don't know if you want to get advice from a person of a certain age who's, who's not as involved in social media as he should be. And younger people are definitely much hotter in that, and they should be, and I should be as well. So I'm not going to disparage all social media. I am going to agree that it's important, but you got to be selective about what platforms you want to be on, what the image is to be on a platform that also features noxious content that can reflect on you as well. So LinkedIn, really good. Instagram, really good. Some of the others, don't know. What do you think, Helen?
I agree. LinkedIn is very good. But I will also say, though, that just in the last year or so, we have been including tweets in our features and news stories. Like if we'll quote a whole tweet from somebody if it's relevant to what we're doing. So this, that can often be part of breaking news. But the other thing I would say about LinkedIn is if you're on LinkedIn, answer your direct messages, because quite often I'll see something interesting on LinkedIn and I'll reach out to that person saying, hey, can we do an interview about this? And I never hear from them.
Oh, wow.
Check your stuff. Check your messages, dudes.
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right, before we go into Q&A, and remember, everybody, we do want you to send and submit your questions via Q&A. We are going to talk to the folks about that. And also, before we go into Q&A, I just want to say so many nuggets here. And look, I don't say this lightly. I will rewatch this show. There's just too many nuggets that are going on. But so far, if you've got the bingo card, we have spray and pray, and we have dumpster fire. Okay, so just make sure you have both of those. All right, so let's get into the Q&A. So we've got some great questions. In the meantime, audience, keep bringing them in. We certainly want to hear from you. And remember, if we don't get to them, we will get to them. We will follow back up with you, and we'll give you the way to follow up with us. So we want to stay connected. This is an important topic to all of us. All right, so the first question is, and I'll start with Christina again. So what are some unique angles supply chain companies can leverage to get media attention?
Yeah, again, you need to know what is the media talking about right now. Google is this incredible resource we have. Type in supply chain and click on news, or if you're in supply chain robotics, whatever you are, what are they talking about, and what have they not covered yet that you can share that story?
Perfect. Bob and Helen, anything on that one?
I think the uniqueness comes from the specificity of your company, your experts, their personal view. And to the extent that you get that, I mean, we keep harping on this throughout the hour, but I think it's worth harping on, is that you just don't want to repeat what you're hearing out there in the ether. You want to bring to bear your own expertise, your own personality. Personality is also very important. We didn't really talk about this, but if you find these media-friendly people within your organization, by all means, put them out there. There are a number of people who can be very droning, and that's who they are, and nothing you can do about it. But there are people in these organizations who are very good on camera, and there's a uniqueness there too that you want to seek out. Find those people and put them front and center.
Right, I agree, Bob. I always, when I was working as a PR consultant, I would always say, what do you want to evangelize about? Like, what can you get really passionate about that's absolutely in your sphere of influence? But, it's that we are, neutral journalists. We can only, we can do interesting features that have a lot of facts and quotes in them. but to have really good, colorful quotes or a really colorful byline that's a little controversial is fantastic. We're definitely looking for that. Everybody wants color and as well as content, and in color often is content. So it's very important, again, to this whole thing about sitting down with your subject matter experts and finding the ones who have something really interesting and compelling to say in an entertaining way. That's, again, gold dust.
Yeah, and we love them. We love our right-brained folks in the industry. Here's a couple of questions from our left-brained people in the industry, and I like this because now they're getting into the weeds a little bit. So Christina, again, starting with you, what are some of the top elements of a great media pitch for supply chain businesses?
For any businesses, you talked about my Get PR famous formula. 3 steps: be newsworthy, which we've covered, a great hook. If you don't have a good hook in the subject line, and Bob and Helen can speak to this, but from my experience, just saying I have a great story idea, they're getting 500 emails. You have to stand out. This is not clickbait at all. This is what is going to make them click to open your very short, very precise email. People want to usually tell the story. Like, I'm going to tell her everything. They don't like to read that. I worked with a news anchor at Fox, and she's like, oh, the PR companies make it so easy for me. They write an email like this, I hit delete. I don't even read it. So, right, guys, right?
Yeah.
If you're good, and I tell my clients this, look in your email box. Are you going to read this email, or are you going to read this one? You're going to read this one. So being concise with it, and then finding the right journalist. Again, we're so honed in right now on supply chain. You don't want to send, I always joke about this, but you don't want to send your supply chain story to the food editor. They're not going to forward it unless you're talking about supply chain for restaurants that is impacting the food industry. So it's really important to have all 3 of those in place for success.
I'll tell you something really scary. When you get hundreds of emails a day, sometimes the success or failure of a particular email rests on the subject line.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
just a few, you got 5 words just to get me to open it, and
Right.
5 or 6 words. And if those aren't the right words, if they don't hone right in on what you're doing, if it's some, cliches and all these words that everybody uses, it's probably going to get deleted without even being opened. So boy, it starts there.
Yeah, it really does. And I would also say, just to go back to something that you said, Christina, journalists used to have beats, and it was easy to find out who was the right person to send a pitch to. That's, in the last 20 years, just fallen apart. So whilst you shouldn't be sending a non-food related supply chain story to the food editor, just be aware that different journalists wear different hats and get sent off onto different assignments. And again, it comes back to reading the publication, doing your research, finding out who's written something that's relevant to what you're pitching.
Yeah.
And Helen, I'll piggyback on that just super quick. Sorry, Ralph.
Yeah, no problem.
Because this changed a lot post-COVID. A lot of the editorial departments just cleaned house.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of freelancers who work for lots of publications. So again, this is where your homework comes in, is finding those freelancers who might write for 5 publications related to your specific part of supply chain.
Yeah. Very important. You're right, Christina. That's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, and here's another one of those in the weeds questions that we could probably spend a lot of time on, but let's at least address it. The questioner wants to know, so how do we measure ROI of PR in B2B industries, especially like supply chain? I mean, this is a good question because on the advertising side, it's hard enough, right? For branding and content creation and all that. Now we're telling them, hey, PR is important, earned media is important, you got to get into this. But now, they're going to be challenged with, but what am I getting financially? Christina, any advice or direction here?
And circling back to what I have talked about, you're in charge of your own ROI. Yes, people are going to watch it and read it on their own. But again, back to you being your own megaphone, you need to invest in that time. Get it on your website, have a press page, use the logos, link to it. I'll get on a quick rant. Don't pay to send out a press release, and then it gets housed on a server somewhere, and you say, as seen on, and list all those publications and TV stations. No, that's not real. Where were you really interviewed? Again, putting it out on LinkedIn, it's up to you to share that with people. And we said this earlier about the Get PR Famous. People love to work with famous people.
Right.
Be that famous person. They are. You all have opportunity to land in the media. Somebody will. The stories aren't going away. So when you are that famous person, it's up to you to stand tall and share with the world that you are the media expert. That's who they want to work with.
We were in a meeting one time, Christina, and you said something that I will always remember, and I want them to hear it from you. Talk about how I'm going through a magazine or I'm going through a website and I see an ad, and after the ad, right?
Yeah.
You know where, so let the
I know.
audience know.
Yeah. So I use the analogy of Joe's Pizza because we all have a Joe's Pizza in our community. And you're flipping through the paper and you see an ad for Joe's Pizza that says, best pizza out, New York style pizza, best pizzas outside of New York. And then you flip a few more pages and there's an article that's written by somebody who used to live in Manhattan and says, I have never tasted pizza this good since I left New York City. Which one is going to make you go try Joe's Pizza? The article. And that's why that editorial coverage, it's somebody else telling the world how great you are. That's why there's so much value to it.
And again, folks, please know it's not an either or thing. This isn't a black and white. It's a both and. The reason you did the advertisement was branding, so that when they saw the article, it clicked. They were familiar with you. Right. And so, we're not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater here.
No.
You can see all of my rings here, and branding is one of them. So you want to make sure you don't do that. All right. Well, listen, guys, I cannot tell you how excited I have been to prepare for and to produce this show. But sadly, time always comes rearing its ugly head and we're out of it. So we have one final question, and Christina, I'm going to give this one to you. And it's pretty basic, but I'll be interested to hear what you have to tell the audience. So what should they be taking away from this session? We've talked about a lot of stuff. Like I said, I really am going to rewatch this. So many great things. But you're the expert. What's one thing they should be taking away from today that they can hone in on? And then what's one thing, whether they're new or they want to, kind of enhance what they're doing in earned media, they should do? So remember and do. What would you say?
So I would have your company, like Helen said, sit down and brainstorm. What are the topics? What is really specific outside of I can talk about everything supply chain? What is your company can they specifically speak about? And make a list. And make a list. If you're a big company, I've worked with a lot of big corporations. We had 20 subject matter experts. So as they're pitching different topics, you have different subject matter experts that can talk about it. Make that list. Work together as a company. And then if you forget anything, don't forget this: value, value, value. Lead with value. You will reap all of the benefits of being interviewed by the media, of having media coverage, but it has to be valuable to their audience. This is not about you. This is about the information you can provide to their audience.
Excellent. Well, listen, my goodness gracious, thank you guys so much for your time. I know how terribly busy you are, so thank you for being here. Audience, thank you. And look, we're going to add value. To Christina's point, I'm going to take that to heart. We're going to add value. The first way we're going to add value, we're going to give you access to the first 2 episodes of this series. So this is episode 3. What Christina did in episode 1 and 2 is she actually went through all of the getting PR famous, how to not be the best kept secret. She gave us details, more of a class, if you will. So you want to tune in to episode 1 and 2, and with these QR codes. And if you don't get a chance to snap a pic, I'll send you an email, but definitely you want to watch episodes 1 and 2. And then finally, we want to give you access to Christina. We want you to have a resource. The reason we bring these folks in as our guests, we want you to be able to connect with them. So do that with chatwithchristina.com. And of course, we would love to hear from you at Supply Chain Brain and Supply Chain Brain Media. Now that you're a lot more educated, Bob and Helen would be thrilled to create a relationship with you on the earned media side. And with that, thank you again for being here. And we sincerely hope that 2025 and your next 12 months is your best earned media year ever.
Thanks,
Take care,
everybody.
guys.
Thanks. Bye.